Allyson Jackson from Purchase College. She is going to be our first presenter located on the East Coast. Allison's first visit to a national park in college ignited a passion that recently culminated in her being awarded a Second Century Stewardship Research Fellowship at Acadia National Park. She engages students and citizen scientists in her food web research so that more people can appreciate the beauty and scientific value of the park system. Allyson?
Hi, thanks Chelsea for that introduction. So today I'm here to talk about the Acadia Bug Project. And as Chelsea said, feel free to contact me after through my email or Twitter if you have any questions about this. So to understand why I did the Acadia Bug Project, you have to kind of understand my research, which is looking at the effect of emergent aquatic subsidies on mercury exposure in riparian songbirds, which is a huge mouthful. The important thing is that I care about these guys, little songbirds that live along water bodies, and how they get exposed to mercury that is usually in the aquatic system. So we generally think that mercury can get taken up by aquatic insects, which then emerge and become emergent aquatic insects, which basically become bird food. This actually is more complicated than that because these songbirds can also eat terrestrial insects like caterpillars that don't have any tie to the aquatic ecosystem. And so if they eat that, they're not going to get exposed to a lot of mercury. They also can eat spiders and other predators, and if these guys are eating terrestrial versus aquatic insects, it can all influence their mercury contamination. So in the end, this isn't a talk about my research. The takeaway of my research is that it's complicated. And to kind of set a stage for how I got into the Acadia Bug Project, I have to take you back to the end of my PhD in 2017, where now when I talk about my research, I generally think it's pretty cool. But after spending 2 years kind of analyzing data and working on my own, I was kind of in these doldrums where I was like really tired of working on this project, wasn't really sure it was cool. And kind of my goal was to write a dissertation where I wasn't even sure anybody was going to read it. If I was lucky enough to get it published, maybe at least some scientists would read it. And I'm sure a lot of people out there have felt this. We maybe got into this because we like being outside and working with people, and we spend a lot of time at our computer. So I was kind of starting to feel like maybe I was a bad scientist because I didn't particularly like the 2 years of working at my computer on my own. And so luckily, I noticed this listing for the Second Century Stewardship Fellowship from Acadia National Park. And this was a fellowship meant to encourage early career researchers to come work in Acadia, but they were interested not only in research, but also in how we communicate and how we engage park visitors in our research. So I started dreaming of a project where instead of just working on publications, I'd also get to work with the public. And I kind of came up with this project, the Acadia Bug Project, and it was eventually funded. My idea was to get people out in the park with me collecting bugs the way I normally do for my research. And I had trained a whole legion of undergraduate researchers during my PhD, so I knew this was fairly easy techniques, as you can see in these photos. I generally use sweep nets, dip nets, beat sheets, pretty low-tech stuff, and I knew that it could be caught on by someone in the public. So I had kind of this idea, and I was really lucky that Acadia and the National Park Service was excited about it as well. They were kind of, all the folks at Acadia were basically like, yeah, let's try this, like, and ready to help me make that jump from being just a researcher to being a researcher who was also kind of wrangling citizen scientists out there in the park. I think Acadia has a really nice combination, and a lot of the parks do, of like, we want to do really good quality science, but we also want to get people interested and get the public engaged. And I think that's really awesome. So in 2018, I had just started this position at Purchase College, and so I was able to bring a whole bunch of undergrads with me up to Acadia to just do this research. What we ended up doing was getting a lot of help in the beginning from park interpretive staff, because this is kind of their jam. They're really good at being able to talk to the public. So they came out with us early on and kind of gave us some tips. We had Schoodic Institute staff come out and be our kind of trial run people, coming out and letting us lead a day with them and them giving us feedback. We also worked with the Acadia Teachers Fellows program, where they came out every few weeks. This is a group of teachers who are out in the park trying to learn new techniques and methods that they can bring back to their classrooms. So in the end, we ended up recruiting a whole bunch of citizen scientists, ranging at the low end to 7 years old up to probably 70 years old. And it was a really amazing experience. A lot of groups came in kind of these multi-generational family groups. And Acadia is kind of a great spot for that because this is a park where a lot of people come back year after year to the same area. So not only are they looking for new things to do, they have a really strong sense of place for Acadia and a love of it. And so at one of our sites, I remember this whole family came, 3 generations of family that said this was the site that they always go to the first week that they're in Acadia, and they were really excited to learn more about the ecosystem. So that was really interesting. So what I learned in doing this work was that our presence as researchers was really important. And I say our presence being me, the PI, and my students who are working for me. I think it's really important that people out in the park got to see what scientists look like. A lot of the conversations that we had weren't really about the nitty-gritty details of my research, but maybe just how I got where I am. And, you know, high school students asking the college students about their experiences. And even the younger kids who weren't asking, like, how do I go to college? They were just seeing us out there as researchers and doing ecological studies in the park. And you can't discount just how seeing somebody out there could influence future career choices. So not only that it was good for the public, I really think this was an amazing experience for me as well, because it really made me a better scientist and communicator. I had to learn in the moment to tailor my message to a 7-year-old who had just caught a dragonfly for the first time and talk to them, and then switch gears and talk to their parent who, you know, doesn't know anything about ecology. Or we even had a high school student who came out who was a million times better entomologist than I was, and I had to figure out how to talk to them who obviously knew a lot about this already. And so what I learned in this experience was to ask questions of the people that I was working with before I kind of dove into this is what we're doing speech, because some of them have a lot of experience, some of them don't. You want to kind of gauge your interest. And that technique is something that I still do today when I go to conferences or talk to other scientists. You kind of want to get to figure out what they feel before you just kind of start blabbing your research spiel onto them. And so at conferences, I do that. In my classrooms, I do that when I'm teaching. I try to hear the students' experiences and go on from there. I'm not really sure anyone who came out with us remembers the intricacies of, mercury cycling, but they remember that they went out and talked with me. And in the end, this whole experience really solidified the importance of diverse methods of science communication. So I spend a lot of time working on papers still. I still think scientific research papers are the most important thing that scientists do to communicate with other scientists, but it's not the only thing. I teach my students, you need to learn how to write in this way, but in the way we write, we're not exactly accessible to all people. And so now we kind of live in this world where there's all these different ways that we can communicate our science. You can do it face-to-face, you can do webinars like we're doing, blogs, social media, there's all sorts of ways to talk to people. And so I think by people going out and working with me in the field and getting to know me as a person, maybe they're more willing to read a blog post by another scientist in the future or by me. And so these kind of ways that even if they don't remember mercury, they're still learning about what science is, I think is really important. And so my takeaway message, I'm assuming if you're on this webinar, you have some interest in this in general. So my 2 takeaways are: do what works for you, especially in terms of the science communication part. Don't force yourself to be on Twitter if you hate it. Don't force yourself to go face-to-face in front of people in a park if you hate it. Do the thing that kind of feels right and just kind of push your limits, but enjoy what you're doing. Which leads into, if you do end up working with citizen scientists, now that I'm 2 years out from that experience, I wish I had taken more time to just enjoy it. I still kind of had my researcher hat on where I was like wanting to get high quality data and working in that kind of mindset. And now I wish I had just spent more time realizing that just being there and talking to them was the important part. And yeah, my research got built into that as well, but it was just the conversations that we had that were really important. So again, here's my contact information. Put more questions in the Q&A box. We're going to hold questions until all the panelists are done. Thanks for listening.
Great. Thank you, Allyson. So next we're going to